All right. Start over again. Go. Or here, wherever you want to go. That's one fine. It doesn't matter.
If I want to get on this side, I only have one ear.
Okay.
So if you're on that side.
So you want me over here? Well, I
Yeah.
move my stuff up. Well, this is an honor,
Thank you.
sir. How are you all? So,
Is this happening? No. Yeah.
can everybody hear us? You got to watch this crowd. They're talking about spanking before you get in here.
Uh-oh.
Or you may be into that. I don't know. What do you want me to ask? So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll ask one question. So everybody start thinking about questions that you have. My first question would be, and I was talking to you last night, I don't know if you remember, for a split second asking you, and I promised that I wouldn't ask a zombie question.
Well, you didn't exactly promise. But...
Well, that's not the way I remember. But anyway, I promise I won't ask a zombie question. But I did ask you about dream projects that you were really interested in. And you said there were several, not so much dream projects, but projects that didn't happen that you would have liked to have done. And you were talking, and 2 or 3 of them I was familiar with. One of them I wasn't. So do you want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Sure. My partner and I went through a period where we just weren't getting anything made. We worked on several projects, and I made more money than I've made over the entire rest of my career, but never made a movie. And there were some big ones that I really wanted to do. The Mommy was big, and my Mommy was not like the one they eventually made. It was more like a romanticized version of the Karloff. And Goosebumps, another one.
Now, I'd never heard about the Goosebumps. I'd heard of Pet Cemetery, The Mummy, but can you elaborate a little bit more about Goosebumps and how that happened and what didn't happen?
It just didn't happen. I mean, at the time, the studio got into a dust-up with, I think, who publishes the R.L. Stein? Scholastic, right?
Right, yeah, Scholastic.
And then the studio got in a dust-up with Scholastic. It was 20th, and they just couldn't come to terms. And I had written the script and everything. I worked with Stein, and we were all happy. And then the biggest one that got away was Resident Evil. I think my script is somewhere, you can get it online. But mine was much closer to the real games. And Capcom loved it. And even the execs at Constantine loved it. We were working with the people in Los Angeles, Constantine. But Constantine is a company where one guy has complete rule over it. And when that guy saw the script that we'd done, he said, "This isn't what I want to do." And this is a guy that had never played a video game, didn't know. He just knew that they had bought the rights to the title because it was a big game, but he just wasn't into the things that we thought that the game was about.
Did you direct a commercial for one of those video games right around the same time?
Resident Evil.
Right.
Right before. In fact, that's how I got hired to do the screenplay.
Oh, okay.
I did the commercial for the second Resident Evil game, and they said, "Hey, we're going to do a movie, and maybe you guys should do it." So I wound up writing several drafts and worked on it until everybody liked it. But the one guy just said, "Forget it."
Also, we all are familiar with your Stephen King relationship. Can you talk about The Stand, Pet Cemetery, and maybe how that, because you mentioned The Stand last night to me.
Yeah, well, those were other ones that I never got to do. The Stand, Steve and I worked on a script for The Stand, and at the time, Steve was saying he would never do it for TV because he thought it would have to be watered down. Eventually, he did do it for TV with my ex-partner, but at the time, Steve didn't want to touch television with it. So we were out pitching this long script. He insisted on that it needed to be 3 hours or 3 hours plus. And everybody said no. And that would have been, I would have loved to have done that. And Pet Cemetery, the same thing. What happened was, again, my ex-partner We wound up holding the rights to it, to all those properties together. My partner and I, we had a company called Laurel. And so what happened was I got stuck doing, I did a movie called Monkey Shines. And I got stuck reshooting the ending for Monkey Shines, which is something that we may not, I mean, I don't want to relive that one, but.
No Monkey Shine questions?
No, it's okay. It was a terrible period. I had terrible times with Orion.
Well, they were going through bankruptcy at the time.
Well,
right?
yeah,
And they didn't know.
nobody knew it at the time of Monkey Shines. Dark Half, that's when we found out.
It came clear.
They basically shut us down. They shut the production down. But they wouldn't let us leave. They wouldn't let us off the hook. So I wound up living in Los Angeles for about 10 months longer, and they kept me on contract.
Were you getting paid?
Hmm?
No, just
No, I was
joking.
not getting
Oh,
paid.
that sucks.
But I was under the original writing and directing contract, and I had to, the edit, and they give you previews, which is supposed to be a gift, but forget about it. It's terrible. Having to do previews is the worst, and that's what happened to Monkey Shine. They previewed it before it was finished, and you get these comments from the audience, and they just twist those things around. They confiscated the audio tapes of the audience. They just make it come out the way they want it to come out.
Right.
So anyway, that was that, and I got stuck having to reshoot the Monkey Shine's ending, and so Richard went ahead and hired Mary to do Pet Cemetery.
Okay.
So
Well, no one wants to hear from me, so who has questions? Come on, we've got somebody up here right now. We'll walk around. What? We got right over here. Do you want to? If you guys want to, you and I can share this one if that's okay.
oh sure.
I got questions for days, man.
Let's try one, and then we'll move on to the next guy.
One I've always sort of been struck by, where did the inspiration for Knightriders come from? Was motorcycle jousting an actual, thing in Pennsylvania in the 70s or something? Because, I've never seen this outside of this movie, and I would pay any amount of money to see it in real life. And I'm just curious, where did that movie come from?
That's a good question.
Well, this is a weird story, man. I was pitching an idea to Sam Arkoff, one of the old guys, with these
AIP for anybody here, right?
Yeah, AIP. They did all the old Vincent Price things.
Right.
And I was out there pitching an idea, and I said, I also am playing around with, I had met some people from this, it's a group called Society for Creative Anachronism. And they do these Renaissance fairs, and they joust, but on horseback. And I said, I'd love to do a story about that. And, it would be sort of a personal story about bucking the system, and they adhere to the rules that they've made up, but they really adhere to these things. They have their own little society. And he said, it will never sell. You want to make it sell? Put them on motorcycles.
If only the Renaissance Festival would follow suit.
And I just laughed and I made fun of that for a long time. And then I thought about it and I said, hey, maybe it's not such a bad idea. And that's where the idea came from. So it came from one of these old movie guys that, automatically think that way. And it made me sort of change my thinking and realize that, it's not such a bad idea. And so I love the film, and it's really, it really is a kind of a personal film with me. So.
That's great, thank you.
Plus, you get to see Tom Savini in that bikini kind of thing. If any of you have ever seen the movie, Who's next? Who has a question? We got one right back there.
Hi.
Hi.
We always hear about different creative types going through a time where there's a rut. Has there ever been a movie, independent or blockbuster, that you saw that inspired you? And if so, what came out of that inspiration?
You know, not recently, not since I've been working. You know, in the early days, I've had all kinds of ideas, and I was actually inspired to make movies by an old film, unusual, but it remains to this day my favorite film. It's a film of an opera. There's not a spoken word in it, and it's called The Tales of Hoffmann, and it's just this beautiful film. It's a fantasy, but so I suppose that's what attracted me to it. I saw it first when I was like 12 years old, and it's just a beautiful film. Michael Powell made the film, directed the film, and he worked with a guy named Emmerich Pressburger. They called themselves the Archers, and they made many wonderful British films. Black Narcissus, Colonel Blimp, I can't think.
Which is it?
Red Shoes was the Red Shoes was
Peeping
from
Tom?
Peeping Tom, great. Although that just basically killed Michael's career. It was a little too rough for the time. I think it could be remade, but anyway, that's the film that inspired me the most. And I Orson Welles stuff, particularly his Shakespeare films, Othello, particularly Othello and Macbeth. And I used to see these things on $1 Million Movie. I grew up in New York City. There was this movie show called $1 Million Movie, and they would show them. They'd show them three times a day on Saturdays and Sundays, and twice a day all during the week. They'd show the same movie all week. And so when I saw something that I loved, I could watch it as many times as I wanted. And that was it. In those days, if you wanted to have a movie at home, there was no such thing as videotape. I remember when my dad brought home the first television that we ever had in our house. And it was a big round tube with all the guts hanging out of it. And I wasn't even in the case. And actually, the first movie I ever saw on that old TV was a Michael Powell movie called The Thief of Baghdad. He didn't do the whole film, but he did most of that. He directed most of that. And by the way, in those days, if you wanted to have a film at home, you had to go rent a projector and a 16mm print. There used to be these audiovisual companies in every town had one. And they would rent prints of movies. That's the way you could bring a movie home. And so I used to go all the way down to Manhattan. I grew up in the Bronx. I'd take the subway down to Manhattan, and there was one company, Janus Films, had The Tales of Hoffmann. So I would go down whenever I had enough allowance money, and I'd take out The Tales of Hoffmann. No one ever took this movie out. It was always available. So then all of a sudden, one day, somebody else started to take this movie out.
I'm glad you're going to tell this.
Okay. and I said, okay. I went home disappointed. Same thing happened a couple of more times. And the guy said, I don't know. I asked who's taking it out. He said, the same kid. The same kid. It's like you. He's the only kid that wants this movie. He lives in Brooklyn. His name is Scorsese.
Now, did that lead to your friendship over all these years?
Well, it actually did, but years later, I never met him to talk to him about it until way later. We were working on a project together for Disney, actually. Again, another one that blew away. It was called Hell Hotel. And Marty loved the idea of the script. And
What was Hell Hotel?
What
was it about?
Long story. It's about
That's what we're here for, man. All these neat people are here for a long story, right? From George Romero. Right?
It's about a way station. One of the devil's imps is sent up to Earth to give people a sort of second chance. So this hotel, when it's your time to go, this hotel appears. It's never there the rest of the time, and you somehow get roped into going to this hotel, and you get a second chance to. And some people screw up again and go to hell, and a few characters that in the script redeem themselves and get saved.
And this was for Disney?
It was for Disney, yeah. So maybe that's why they didn't buy it.
Was this in the 80s when we were trying to be a little more...
It was probably late 70s, early 80s,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, so I met Marty through that. And then, as it turns out, Martin's editor, still today, is a woman named Thelma Schumacher, who late in his life married Michael Powell. And so through Thelma, I got to meet Michael, and we hung out a little bit.
So you got to hang around your hero.
Got to hang out with my hero.
That was great.
Went to a couple of dinners and had a great time. And I still communicate with Thelma. And now the Tales of Hoffman is just newly restored. Scorsese being, excuse me, Scorsese's been a champion of Michael Powell's for years. And he's responsible, it was largely responsible for the restoration of the Red Shoes and Black Narcissus. I've actually done commentary tracks on Hoffman. And so Thelma and Marty were off in Taiwan shooting One from the Heart, this new film that Marty is about to release.
Yeah.
Is apparently something that he's really passionate about. So they were tied up when the Tales of Hoffman opened. So I have sort of this little minor career going around and introducing the film when it opens. We been to New York and Czech Republic.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So what goes around comes around, I guess.
Well, you also have a minor career doing a little voiceover. I think I heard you on Phineas and Ferb, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true?
Yes.
So you ended up working for Disney anyway.
Yeah. So I always, well, Marvel is owned by Disney.
Well, yeah, everything's owned by Disney.
Yes, and now I'm doing comic books for Marvel, so I'm working for Disney again. And you know what? They don't give us a single copy of the
Really?
like they don't have enough dough.
Right. You're not going to get any free theme park tickets either.
Not at all. No. We actually have to go buy the comics when they come.
SOBs, damn mouse. All right. Yes, we have a question right back there, gentlemen. He's coming around for the microphone right now.
I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. I'm Roy from Georgetown, Kentucky, and I could be here for days asking questions to you. You're awesome. And
Thank you.
like I say, I got two questions. One's about Creepshow. Would you ever do like another movie, like a stories, whether it be with Stephen King or a director of your choice to be able to do some stories just like Creepshow? And what's your take on the Crazies remake? What's your review of it?
Well, the Crazies remake. The point, sometimes I don't know why they remake films just because of the title, and I don't know why they like that title. The original movie didn't make any money, so it's not like the title was a big deal title at all. But the point of the Crazies, the Crazies that I made, was that you weren't supposed to know who was crazy. They turned it into basically a zombie film, and the Crazies all looked, they were all messed up, and faces with pustules on them, and they looked green and ugly. So you can sort of tell who's crazy. The point of our film was that you weren't supposed to know. The guys in the government are just as crazy as the people that are infected. And that was the point we were trying to make. That was sort of this satire that we were going with. So immediately I didn't realize, I didn't think that there was a reason to remake that film. I felt the same way about the remake of Dawn. When we make Dawn, that was the first shopping mall that we'd ever seen. It was the first one in Western Pennsylvania, indoor shopping mall. And so I went out to visit it. I socially knew the people that were developing the mall, and I went out to visit. And before it was open, and I saw all these trucks bringing in everything that you could ever possibly want in your life. And I said, oh, I gotta write about this. Because I thought it was extraordinary that this whole temple to consumerism. And basically that's what it's about. But by the time they did the remake, that didn't exist at all. I mean, Zach is a good filmmaker. I think the first 15, 20 minutes of that movie are really good, strong, hot. But after that, I just didn't think there was a reason to remake it. But anyway, so that's that. As far as Creepshow, nobody wants to do anthologies anymore. And I don't know why. They feel that it's too expensive. You have to hire a different different cast for each story. And that was true when we did Creepshow, but those actors, we couldn't afford it if they were Schwarzenegger or somebody that was getting 10, 20 million bucks a picture. But we were working with people that were not getting nearly that much money, and so we were the cast didn't matter. Our entire cast cost less than probably what Schwarzenegger charges for a single flip. But they just don't want to do anthologies. On TV, they don't want to do them at all because they like having the same sets, the same cast, everything that cost amortizes itself. And everything is so expensive now to produce that it's really hard to sell somebody on an anthology. I did one years ago called Tales from the Darkside. And actually there's a little interest in doing that now again. And Steve King's son, Joe Hill, wrote a script for a pilot, and they actually shot it. And then they shelved it. And now they're sort of shopping around for, they're talking to me, they're talking to a few other people about trying to redo that as an anthology. But I don't think, and that would be maybe the only way, if we could get a TV show going again that was an anthology, and then we could make a movie out of it. Like they made a Darkside movie eventually. That's it. Creepshow will never. Richard, again, my ex-partner, sold the rights. They did a Creepshow 3, which I haven't seen, but I heard it was not so hot. And it's gone. Neither Steve nor I had anything to do with that. And the rights are now gone to whoever made that other version of Creepshow. So I don't know. There'll never be another Creepshow unless somebody decides to purchase those rights and revisit. It comes back to us again. But we'll have to see what happens there. But if we could get another Darkside going, maybe there could be another Darkside movie. But it's at least a couple of years off.
Did you see the Joe Hill pilot?
I saw it because they sent it to me to say this, basically to say we don't want to do this. I thought it was pretty good. It was a little esoteric, and I thought that if it had been done well, if it had been directed well, that there was definitely something there in Joe's work. But it was terribly done, really terribly done.
I think the same thing happened with him as Lock and Key. They shot a pilot for that for a TV show, for a graphic novel he's done called Lock and Key.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
And they shot a pilot for it.
That's what I read, that they shot a pilot and shelved that as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah. What other questions do we have? Okay, we got one over here and one over here. Whichever one, Chad. Would you mind standing up, sir?
Hello. I wanted to ask actually about Tales from the Darkside actually, because I used to watch that show all the time and I think it was a very well done anthology series. And there's so many different plots and it varies so much. I wanted to ask if there was any particular episode that you remember making that was fun to make, or which episode that you thought was the best all-around story.
It's hard for me to speak to that. I never directed any of them. I wrote the pilot, and I think I wrote 4 or 5 others. And there was a wonderful story editor on that show for the first season, first year. And unfortunately, he passed away. I thought a lot of the stories were really good. They were very diverse. There were a lot of young directors actually got their shots starting on that show. Savini did one. John Harrison did one. Did a couple, I think. And they were able to get good casts. I think Martin Sheen did one, and I'm trying to think. I know one of the ones that I did, Jerry Stiller was in one. I don't remember. Actually, I like the one that I wrote about called The Devil's Advocate. There was a radio talk show guy who basically turns into the devil, becomes. But I guess that's what I think of radio talk shows. What's that?
That was the one with Jerry Stiller, the Devil's Advocate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Jerry Stiller.
Cool. So we had another question over here. Who had their hand up? There's one there. Yeah.
I was just wondering, with the influx of the comic book movies that have been coming out lately, if you had a chance to pick a character, a certain story arc, to make a movie out of, who would you pick and why?
I'm sorry, my comic book?
No, if you had the chance to choose a Marvel character or a team or story arc, who would you pick? And
Oh boy. I don't know. Unfortunately, it's been picked already. I think I'd love to do Batman, but it's been done. It's been done pretty well a couple of times too.
It has been, but can you imagine Romero's Batman? I can't fathom what. How would you?
I think the Dark Knight, I could make him dark.
Have you given a lot of thought to that, or how you would approach that, other than making it dark? But
No, just
I want to be Batman.
yeah.
That sounds great. Next question. Oh, we got one right over here.
I've always been curious, being the father of the zombie genre, what is your favorite, not your zombie movie, TV show, incarnation? Who other than you has done the best zombie, like, outside of you? Yours are the best. Who do you give your second best to?
Wow, it's tough. I almost have to say Shaun of the Dead, but I loved it. I love those guys, and we still see them. Simon and Edgar came in to be zombies in Land of the Dead.
Yeah. The photo booth.
The photo booth zombies, yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I thought the second 28 Days thing, but they're not zombies, they're not dead. So I can forgive them for running.
Vampires don't twinkle and zombies don't run.
All right, next question, please. Oh, okay, we got a couple here. We got this lady here in the middle, and then this lady over here. Right there, ma'am, if you could raise your hand, please, yeah, so we can see you.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Were you ever approached to do any of the Masters of Horror segments? Were you ever approached for that?
Yeah. I was involved, actually, in the very beginning. I went to the opening party and the launch party and everything, and then I just felt that they were just exploiting these people. And everybody that was going along with that. Carpenter told me he had a great time doing the ones he did. Even Dario Argento did one or two.
I didn't see that thing.
Yeah, and you know, of course, he never likes anything that he doesn't write. But so I don't know. And then, you know, originally they said you can do whatever you want, you can write your own stuff. And then, but by the time it came down to it, the budgets were so limited, and they didn't want me to take the time to write something, and I just said. And then I noticed the way they were doing it. It seemed like just a bunch of producers, even though a couple of the producers were actually directors, film directors. But I just thought they were exploiting the names. And, you know, they really, the core of people that were doing that show really had nothing to do with horror, didn't have any affection for it. And so I bowed out. I just didn't want to do it.
Right here. Can you raise your hand? And he'll bring the microphone up too.
Yes, this is rather an offbeat question, but I'm a big Scorsese fan. And if you and Martin Scorsese consider doing a project together, and how would that work?
Well, the way it worked, it did work. We were working on this thing for Disney.
I mean, when it actually comes to fruition.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if it ever would. I don't know how it would work. I was going to direct. Marty had a deal at the time, oddly, at Disney. His production company signed a deal with Disney. And I think he made a couple of pictures there. I don't know which ones, or you know, I don't remember. But he had a deal at Disney.
Maybe the color of money?
Possibly.
Yeah, maybe the color of money.
I think it was.
Yeah, probably.
But I don't know how it would work. I mean, I haven't spoken to him about doing anything like that for quite some time. But he's very active in film preservation, and he's a great guy.
Okay, thank you. We have a question right over here, and then we have one right up front. So, who's first, sir?
With the way the business has changed today with distribution and studios and so forth, what kind of opportunities do you think there are for people today still for screenwriting and directing?
You know, there's always an opportunity. You just have to get somehow, if you're a filmmaker, you have to shoot something that attracts enough attention. People always say, what should I do if I want to make movies? And I say, you just have to shoot. You can't go out and talk to somebody and say, I know how to make a movie. You have to somehow be able to show it. So fortunately, these days you can get a camera and make a movie on, you know, a camera that you can carry in your pocket. So in the old days when I was just beginning, we had to use film. There was no other choice. Happily, I was working in Pittsburgh at the time. I grew up in New York City, went to Pittsburgh to go to college. And cities the size of Pittsburgh, in those days, all had film labs, because there was no such thing as videotape. So the news was on film. The news, the nightly news. And every city had these news guys that would go around with film cameras, shoot the news stories, bring them back, and there were these journeyman editors at these labs that would glue them together, literally glue them with film cement, and send them out to the stations. My first job was bicycling those newsreels around to the TV stations in Pittsburgh. So I learned on film. I learned how to make film on using film. But today, man, I mean, you can get little, you know, inexpensive editing systems, inexpensive cameras, and my advice is just shoot. Now, as far as a writer, you have to have, people will read scripts, but don't send them to directors. First of all, I'm not allowed, my agent won't allow me to read a script. My lawyers won't allow me to read a script that a stranger gives to me. It has to go through an agent. So the best place to send your stuff is to agencies, to talent agencies. Because they'll have somebody read it. Now that's not sometimes, you know, the process of people reading your stuff. Some people just don't get it. Some people don't care enough about it. But they usually have specialists at each of the agencies. That's, you know, somebody that loves horror or will be interested or looking for, you know, something fresh in a horror writer. And so that's my advice, just send it to the talent agencies.
Okay. We had a question. Was it you, sir? And then you? Right over your chair. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hi. One of my favorite things about your movies is the underlying social commentary, where you could watch the movie and really dig into it, try to see what you're saying. What would you pick out of American life today? What is irking you the most is something that you need to pull out.
Wow. I don't know. I guess, I don't know. I wish I could do a zombie Trump. I guess all I need is the hair.
You have said it out loud now. Some asshole is going to steal that idea. And you're going to be watching it tonight. He goes, what do you think about that zombie Trump film? You're going to get pissed. Yes, ma'am.
With everybody doing remakes of old movies, it seems that just new ideas from new scriptwriters are just kind of like read over and set aside. Is it because they know a lot of the previous movies they're remaking were money makers originally, and they're just wanting to get the money and not actually be creative?
Yes. Short answer. Yeah, I mean, you know, some of these people are just, they have no affection. I use that word again. It's like trying to find somebody that really has an affection for the medium, and, you know, even knows old movies. I mean, you know, you run into people like my wife recently ran into somebody who didn't know who Paul Newman was. You know, and okay, so Paul hasn't been around for a couple of years, but, you know, what about popcorn? What about salsa? You know, people, you know, they don't know. There's a story about someone actually took the script for Casablanca and submitted it. And first of all, nobody recognized it. Secondly, nobody wanted to do it. And so, did you ever hear that story?
No, I've never heard that story, but it doesn't shock me whatsoever.
You know, there's a lot of these young kids that have either made money in some other field or, you know, come up through you know, the accounting office or whatever, and really they're not movie people. And
Actual show business.
yeah, and you know, it's really hard to find people that you can even have a conversation with or connect with. It's usually the sort of the front line guys, you know, the people that are either out there actually doing the work, or directors, or people that go into all the other specialties, you know, everything, stage design, cinematography. Those are the people that really have an affection and are in there touching and feeling. The execs are generally, by and large, they're just not, they really don't care much, and they'll always go for a proven title. I mean, I don't know, the Crazies, I mentioned that before, the Crazies were never a proven title, never made money on in the first place. But for some reason, they liked the title, and they bought it, you know. But they'll always go with something that they feel is proven over something new, unless it's spectacularly fresh or you know, a really sort of great idea, but hard to find those anymore. You know, I know, I actually had a friend of mine who sold us the Last Boy Scout script out of the blue. He wrote it, sold it for, you know, I don't know, $500,000 or something. Somebody bought that, and because they thought it was a fresh idea. But, you know, it's lightning striking.
Right place at the right time.
Yeah.
We got a question mark.
I don't know microphone.
Well, so everybody else can.
Sure.
If you don't mind. We got a big
I
crowd.
was like, I sang opera, I can project. I was wondering, as a great follow-up to that question, what your feelings were about the kind of new frontier of releasing and making feature-length content and releasing it only on the internet. And even some mainstream Hollywood people turning to that to release their ideas.
Well, you know, I think out of frustration, and people are able to do that. If you have a big enough name, you can get somewhere with it pretty quickly. But I don't know, you know, this kind of self-fund, you know, Indiegogo, these kinds of things. I don't know. I'm so suspicious of that. And first of all, I can't go out and really go under the radar. I have to shoot. I'm a member of the unions, so I have to shoot. I have to pay union scale first of all. Everybody, all the extras on up. So I can't go out and make a movie for, you know, $200,000. I couldn't do it because I couldn't afford to pay the crews unless I want to quit the guilds, and I don't necessarily want to do that because I'm still getting royalties. But so that makes it tough.
Kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and so you have to either be able to get people to work on a handshake or, you know, say that they're being paid when they're actually not, you know, and that's a big favor to ask. And, you know, there's a project that I would love to do. It's a silly little zombie comedy that I think would only, I don't know, it wouldn't, and I could do it actually as a series of web-based things. But
What's that for Christmas?
yeah, well, listen, I'd love to, but you know, I go out and I try to pitch this thing, and sort of nobody gets it, or you know, it's zombie related. Do you think that I can go out there with a zombie thing and raise money for it? It's tough. Brad Pitt ruined it all for us.
Elaborate a little bit on that about World War Z.
Well,
What do you mean that you ruined it all?
Well, the problem is that, you know, when I used to be the only guy doing zombies. Now, all of a sudden, the whole world is doing it. You got, you know, The Walking Dead.
Are your coattails tired?
Huh?
Are your coattails tired?
Oh, I'm telling you, forget about it. The problem now is that Hollywood thinks that you have to spend $200 million to make money with a zombie flick. And that's what Brad Pitt did. You know, they were even having a hard time getting the second Zombieland going. And Zombieland, I don't know, made $75 million or something, which is not. It was a relatively low budgeted film, but you know, Hollywood's not interested in $75 million. They want to make $400, so they think you have to spend $2. And anyway, it'll die down, and eventually The Walking Dead will fall down. They'll get tired of walking. And you know, then maybe I can sneak back in there with a little movie. I did Land of the Dead. It was the biggest budget that I ever had on a zombie film. Dark Half was a little higher budget, but Land of the Dead was like 19 million plus. And again, it didn't need to be. It was, you know, Dennis Hopper, Simon Baker, Leguizamo, you know. I mean, Dennis Hopper's cigar budget was more than I had
His
for the
cigar
entire
budget?
Night of the Living Dead.
His cigar budget?
His cigar budget was a line item.
Monte Cristos or Cajitas? Or just Cajiba?
So, you know, we didn't need that. And anyway, so I fled back and I did the next Diary and Survival for really low bucks. Diary was under 2 million, or just 2.2 million, I think, and Survival was under 3. And I prefer, you know, that's like working at it's like the $2 betting window at the track. You know, you don't have to make that much in order to succeed. And you don't need to spend that much money to just do a little zombie film, particularly if you want to sort of, you know, have something to say with it, or you have something underneath that you're trying to explore, an idea underneath it all. And, but, you know, no one wants to hear that. I mean, you can't pitch that. You know, if I went in and tried to pitch a zombie film on the basis of the you know, consumers, it's a satire about consumerism, they would say, get out of here. You know, you have to say it's going to be zombie action, lots of gore. So,
We got time for one more question.
Here's the first one.
Thank you.
all right.
First thing I want to say is thank you for what you've done. You've made me into the man I am today.
What kind of man are you?
Good one, I hope. But the question I have for you is, when you're writing any of your zombie apocalypse genre at all, do you have an end game in your head? Like, is there any hope for the survival of mankind, or is this truly the apocalypse and the end of mankind as we know it?
You know, I've never thought it out that much. You know, I've never thought that deeply about it. I've always just dealt with the present. I thought when I did Land that maybe that would be the last one that I ever did. And so I sort of ended it with them deciding to leave each other alone. And I thought maybe that would be, so I think that if I ever had to end it, I think I would sort of end it that way, with, you know, two-state solution. Because you know, I would hope that that's the way it would turn out. I mean, I can't, you know, I can't. If someone dominated, it would have to be man. Except that if you're dealing with some supernatural force, which means that, you know, every dead person comes back, then that's probably an overwhelming thing. There's this society going. I forget.